Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of sign here. It looks like we have some new people on, so I'm just gonna do some introductions and then we'll slide right into the webinar. So my name is Genevieve Hauk. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager at STQRY. We have recently rebranded, so we're really excited to share with you our STQRY session webinars. These happen bi-weekly, so the link you use to join today, you can use that next week or the week after, and so that's gonna be Wednesday, and that's gonna be at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time always. And then also on the line, we have Thomas Dunn, our CEO, and we have Josh Gilbert. He is the Director of Customer Experience. And then we have Travis, who is a client manager with us. And then we have some other people who are attendees who are some of your client managers. Sometimes they just join to kind of sit in the background and see what questions you guys are asking and to kind of see, what's going on in these webinars weekly. So any questions you guys are asking today, they're going to be relayed to your client managers. They're kind of on the line, keeping tabs on those. So if you have any questions, completely feel free to just email those questions to them if they aren't discussed in the webinar. We're always open to having one-on-one meetings and just kind of going over anything that was discussed. So also on the line, and I will, without further ado, introduce Dana Michaelovich. She is going to discuss the indoor navigation. She is a museum expert, very qualified in these types of technologies. So we're really excited to kind of have her not only go over some of these technologies, but discuss with you specifically how exactly, or why exactly they work so well, or why they're needed, especially in the age of COVID. Indoor navigation is going to become even more so kind of pertinent. So Dana, I'm just going to pass it over to you and we can just dive right in.
Thank you very much. So hello, everyone. My name is Dana. I'm an expert in digital solutions for museum, focusing on indoor orientation. I've researched the way museums use digital tools to communicate with their visitors in my academic career, and in the past 2 years I founded and managed my own company which provided mobile apps combining indoor navigation tools to museums in Europe. And this lecture is about the value that indoor navigation can give to the tour experience. We'll just go over the agenda for the lecture. We'll start with the way that indoor navigation tackles one of the main challenges of the museum tour, then see how content integrates with the ability to navigate in the museum, talk about the various technologies out there, and also touch upon the effects of COVID on the virtual and on the on-site tour. And of course, I'd be happy to answer any questions at the end of this lecture. So diving right into it, one of the major challenges of the tour is called the museum fatigue. It is the feeling of frustration and unfulfillment that visitors tend to succumb to during their tour. So it can be in different levels, in different visitors. And it is determined both by the factors of the visitor himself or herself, different level of patience and what they've done before the tour. Maybe they got in already a bit tired, and also with the museum's settings and the interaction between them. So here are some examples of this phenomena. You can see stress, information overload. So it can be sometimes from overload of digital tools and overload of text and audio explanations. It all competes for the visitor's attention. And we can use, and also it affects the decision making that these visitors will have when they want to come back to this museum, or in general to go to museums more. So to solve this problem, we can use technology, and specifically we can use indoor navigation capabilities. So we have 3 factors that can help visitors relax and decrease the museum fatigue. The first one is the theme. So once you define the theme of the tour, it can be a highlight tour, an expert tour, kids tour, family tour. And then the theme will necessarily dictate other two factors, like the duration of the tour and the specific route, like the turn by turn that visitors will go by. And I would like to mention as well the case of accessibility for people with disabilities, that this can really be helpful because you can lead them through corridors with elevators or suggest points where they can take a rest, sit down, take breaks. And then another aspect where the indoor navigation can kind of dictate the theme is that first you can define one big text and then customize it for each type of tour. So if you have a shorter tour going through only the highlights in the museum, you can do a concise overview, maybe add one or two anecdotes, and you can see in the slide like what you can do for experts or people that come already knowing where they want to go. So you can help them by marking the route to go there. It really helps decrease their level of fatigue and stress. And also there's a conception that presenting limited options for a tour can sometimes block the visitor's desire to wander. And it isn't true, in my opinion, because even the type of people that kind of want to wander for 5 hours, they still like a general idea of the time frame in which they can experience the exhibition. And you can even plan a wanderlust type of tour, presenting various routes, themes, maybe like random routes. Now, sorry, I want to go over some of the technologies for indoor navigation that are out there. And these are not all the technologies, and some of you may know additional ones, and I'd love to hear about them. First, we have the most the popular one, and it's the high end of the sector and the way it uses that. It's the Bluetooth beacons. Their accuracy is very, very high. And well, I mean, they're very, very stable, and the pricing was quite high. Now, I think as time passes, the pricing is more comfortable. The drawback is that the logistics of it can be not that smooth. So it requires some installation, and the more that technology becomes, will improve, then you will need less beacons, but you still need some logistics to it. Now there's some other, I put it in one category of radio frequency and Wi-Fi, TV signal, and their accuracy is medium. So it works really well if you have some big spaces and not specific objects. And then the logistics doesn't require much. Like if you have an internet router, that can be good for that. The pricing is, I would say, some medium, like it varies. And then there's an audio solution that you can install MP3 signal files in your speakers in the museum. For example, if you have a speaker in your room, you make it play an MP3 file in a loop, and then the speaker of the phone gets it. So that's how you navigate in the museum. And the accuracy is also best just for big rooms. It doesn't go into specifics to the painting or to the sculpture that you're looking at. And also, it's relatively new in the field of museums. So I would say, like, unlike Bluetooth that you can kind of compare and see how it's been working, then audio will need a couple more years for that. And another technology is the NFC chips, the near field communication. It is considered some of the most powerful and accurate location finding systems in the market, yet it requires extensive additional equipment in order to run it. And a major drawback for that is that cell phones are not natural receivers. And so for mobile apps, when you're using mobile apps, it isn't the go-to that I would use for museums. And the final technology that I wanted to talk about and mention is geomagnetic sensor. It was pioneered by a few Finnish physics, and it doesn't depend on the building to install any additional devices. Yet it maps the building, the magnetic field of the building. It's really very stable, very trustworthy. And the drawback is that it didn't gain much amount of experience in museums. And again, there are many additional other technologies, but we can, these are the most popular ones, beacons being the leading of these technologies. Now, I also wanted to relate to how museums are adapting to COVID-19 and how it will affect the on-site visits and virtual tours. So the effect can be seen on the on-site visit first. It enables for the museum to monitor and track the entrance, for example, sending notifications to visitors, notifying them that they can enter in a more safe time, or maybe kind of book the tickets to a specific time, and tracking the number of visitors per room. So each state or each place has its own kind of guidelines of how many people are allowed in a certain space. So you can really track that and follow, and then people will feel more safe coming to the museum knowing that there's a personnel tracking these guidelines. For virtual tours, I think that there's type where you can, maybe you've seen that, some of the big museums has done that. It's similar to Google Street View, where you can really navigate inside the museum, kind of turning right and left. And some museums have solutions that have like an information and just like pages of information, but in a virtual tour, you can really navigate, and you can use the indoor navigation as a map, like choosing the routes. People can from home choose the various routes that they want to do and really feel like they're the closest they can be. So yeah, for me, I've finished the main topics I wanted to discuss about, and I would love to hear your questions, and you can also write me after the lecture, and I'll be happy to kind of correspond via email. And thank you very much.
Yeah, so feel free to put your questions in the Q&A or in the chat while I'm waiting for anyone who has any questions, especially if you have any questions about how to implement these technologies into your actual apps or your actual tours now. Definitely ask those now. We have Josh on, we have some client managers on, so you know, we can totally discuss certain individual cases as well. So I guess I'll wait for some questions to kind of flow in, but Dana, I had a few questions just in terms of like bandwidth. So a lot of like our museum clients or cultural institutions, they have limited bandwidth and limited staff. Which one of those technologies do you think is like lower maintenance but also highly accurate, where it would work really well for you know, a staff with lower bandwidth or just limited amount of people to work on this project?
So thank you for the question. I think I would say, yeah, Bluetooth beacons will be the best for bandwidth, since Bluetooth works well with, you know, it requires Bluetooth. And also regarding the personnel, if you still have like an IT department, you can have one person working on the setup in front of the company that supplies that. I would say that maybe I'll switch over to the slide. I would say that you can still see my screen, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So there's Wi-Fi technology, and it requires lots of bandwidth. So I would not use that if you don't have a good infrastructure of internet. And of course, visitors nowadays, they kind of demand having a Wi-Fi in pretty much every space. So unless you have a good infrastructure, I wouldn't use the Wi-Fi and the TV signal. I would definitely use the Bluetooth beacons. And in terms of maintenance, it does require some maintenance. So you would have to put like a person in charge of that, at least for the setup and for some weeks after to kind of follow up on the technology, see that everything works fine.
I have a question, Dana. So I know we're talking about cultural destinations, but have you had any experience with other industries and kind of how their use is working in you know, in other types of venues?
So I've seen that and kind of had a chance to discuss with several shopping malls working with indoor navigation and using notifications for shopping. And they also kind of cross the data with Google, maybe Gmail, and kind of identifying if you're into sports or into food or something that's in the shopping mall. And they use it. They use it also in Israel in some shopping malls. And I think the advantage for museums can be definitely taking some of the concepts used there into their field as well, connecting with the souvenir shop, stuff like that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and we've actually had, we have had certain like towns who are creating apps, and like you had mentioned, Dana, a lot of times they use some of this technology for like those alerts of like what's in the area. And yeah, sometimes we do have people like put them in certain shops or in certain restaurants, and a lot of towns were using them just to alert, you know, tourists as to certain destinations that they might enjoy. So, and then a lot of people also use the badges as well as kind of like a scavenger hunt. Like if you go to these stores, you are in these badges. So that's definitely an interesting way to use them instead of just in for museum indoor navigation. It looks like we have another question. So this one is, we will use locators for once-a-year tours inside private homes, so they cannot be permanent locators. Which technology would work best for this situation? Low cost, but also easily movable, that would work well with people's devices. We can't count on Wi-Fi coverage because private homes, they don't have control over that. So they would be using, they would be doing individual rooms, if I'm understanding them correctly. So you'd have a locator individual room is what I'm understanding.
Interesting usage. I would say, let me just read it here once more.
Yeah. So I guess which ones? I guess there's multiple parts to this question. So which ones of these are kind of permanent? I'm assuming, like you said, the geomagnetic sensors. Those ones are kind of cost effective, have a decent amount of equipment. I'm assuming those are not as portable as a beacon or something else. So I guess which one of these are portable, and which one do you think would have maybe even like distance and accuracy just to be placed in individual rooms of homes?
So I would recommend, you said like the geomagnetic, and it is the perfect solution because most houses, like, they don't change their, they're like heavy pillars or like heavy blueprint. So, and it is permanent, like for centuries, it can still work, but it is pricey for, private companies. And so I think for that, and NFC is good as well, but it's pricey. I think that I would still use Bluetooth beacons, and I would kind of invest in a much improved version of the beacons so they can last like 2 years, maybe 3, without changing their battery. And then it doesn't require much internet bandwidth.
Yeah, and for this particular question, they say like once a year they do private home tours. So it would be the non-permanent solution, but I think you're right. I think that probably beacons, being more portable and being able to configure them might work best. But Josh, also correct me if I'm wrong, because you are our beacon guru at STQRY, so I don't want to speak out of turn here.
Yeah, I would have also recommended beacons because they can be moved, from home to home if those home tours are changing year to year.
You know, Dana, I want to ask you if this is correct or not. I'm going to go off on a tangent for a second, but when I researched indoor, the magnetic fields, I was told that the scientist discovered it because he was programming his robot to go like so far north and then turn like, east and so forth. And when he would do it in different settings inside, like where he was manufacturing these things, he found them going in different directions than, like, say, for example, like true north or east. But he found that the building itself puts up, a magnetic field that interacts with the regular magnetic field, and it's constant within that if you don't make major changes to the structure, right? Is that how that works? Just if you could.
So I'm not familiar with the story about the robot, but the way you explain it, that's how it works. They kind of define it as the error mistake angle. So the house has this magnetic field, and then they say, okay, this is north. And then once you like make a mistake, they kind of define this mistake as this turn and this turn. So they map the entire place or space in relation to the mistakes to the north.
Right. Okay.
So
right.
they use just like a compass. It's really
because that once you map the indoor space, you're having the problem with the changes. But other than that, you say, but it's not that accurate yet. It still has a lot of. It needs to be improved still, doesn't it?
It does. I think mostly in the API sort of way, because the technology itself, it works, but they still need to improve kind of the API, and especially for museums, they have many rooms. I know they use it for big supermarkets. You have like this section, and in Germany, some supermarkets change in Germany. But I think for the future, it will be one of the most interesting technologies to follow up on in the subject of indoor navigation.
Yeah, it will be. It'll be interesting to see how that develops.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of like segues into another question I had. I know we, like, in terms of technology, like technology can change so rapidly. I mean, look at Apple. I mean, they come out with a new product every day, and it's hard to even keep up and buy the newest product. For like indoor navigation technologies, how fast would you say like the technology adapts or changes, or someone comes out with like a new or better beacon or something more accurate in terms of like, you said the geomagnetic sensors, those are fairly new. How fast would you say like that technology kind of changes?
So not so fast. It can take, for beacons are with us for, I don't want to, like 20, 30 years even before that. And then it will take a few years for, even when you come up with a new technology, it will take a few years to make it stable and for the market to trust that technology, especially museums that they want to see that something works really well and they have minimum maintenance for that. And they want to, and it's always hard to get a customer to be the beta tester for something. So
the guinea pig.
Yeah.
So I guess my last question, and I normally ask like these much broader like industry related questions toward the end, but I know being like a museum expert and knowing about this indoor navigation and watching how COVID just rapidly changed everything, especially with new guidelines in place, especially here in the US with us trying to keep social distancing in place. Do you have any predictions for the industry, like since COVID, in terms of that indoor navigation and how things might adapt and change?
So, in my opinion, I'm an optimist in the sense of people visiting museums on site. I think museums survived so many hard periods of times, like they survived different wars and all sorts of crises.
Yeah.
And people would even be more important for them to visit places on site, and it will just have to be really, really regulated, and it will be a trigger to push new digital changes. With that being said, I think that most museums need to really step up their game in terms of their virtual tour, because it can be developed so much more, like group tours that involve trivia questions and like school lessons for students and for school kids. And so I think in both fields it will make many changes, but maybe for the better, because museums will then can give more access to their content virtually and on site.
Yeah, and I know that we know at STQRY we see, and my master's was in arts management, and primarily in Europe, and Europe especially kind of like pushes back sometimes on, adding this technology, also because, approval can take a long time and there's a lot of red tape to get through. So implementing these changes, it's not easy. So yeah, I think I'd have to agree. I think that this might kind of push people into an area of, okay, well, like maybe it's time to start having these discussions about digitizing something and kind of really pushing our tours and having more indoor navigation, which ultimately at the end of the day, I don't think cheapens the experience at all. I think it really helps with the accessibility, and if people want to use the tour, they can, and if they don't want to, then that's their choice. But just having it as an option just really makes it more accessible and inclusive for everyone. It's just a really much more broad experience, I think. So yeah, I think I would definitely have to agree on that one. But do you have any other questions, Tom?
No, thank you so much, Dana. It was really great. I'm fascinated by this and the way it can be leveraged to enhance the visitor experience. And we're using it some with beacons, and some of that can trigger wayfinding. I think we can do more. So I'm excited to do even more with this in the future. So thanks for being a guest today.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to have this lecture and for your time. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna surprise everybody on the call here today. Dana may be joining us to work as a consultant and help us some work in Europe. So we're really excited about that. Hopefully that will happen very soon. We were talking to Dana about her business, and the conversations went quite well. And we were really impressed with Dana and how professional and she thinks she's going to be a great addition to the team. So hopefully that gets worked out. And she's actually one of the STQRY team members coming up soon.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That big announcement. I'm excited. I think it will be really good to have someone else on board who knows in depth about these museums and how these cultural institutions work. And I'm really excited. And I definitely learned a little bit more about these other technologies other than beacons. I was pretty familiar with the beacons, but it's nice to know that there are the other options out there that people can use, and even some more permanent options for museums like those geomagnetic sensors. So thank you so much, Dana. I really appreciate it. Thank you everyone for joining. Keep an eye out for our next newsletter about, who we'll have on kind of in a few weeks. And it was great talking to everyone, and hope to talk to everyone soon. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.